We see some pretty negative fallout when people transition off their synthetic GLPs.
When people are titrating off the GLP-1 injectables, you have actually suppressed your endogenous GLP-1 to almost zero. This is why they get this massive hunger. A group of very talented scientists had the hypothesis that they would find a plant-based extract that suppressed appetite. What they showed was these bitter taste receptors, when stimulated with something very bitter, released three appetite-suppressing hormones: CCK, GLP-1, and PYY.
I can see this being used as a tool to support people following some of the dietary patterns that we prescribe.
I want to personally invite you to the Functional Medicine is Longevity Medicine Masterclass, a free online event featuring the leading minds in functional and longevity medicine. We'll explore why functional medicine remains the most science-backed path to extending health span. In a world chasing the latest longevity hacks, we're spotlighting what we've known all along. Healthy longevity starts with root cause resolution, systems biology, and personalized care. Join us live September 17th through the 19th at functionalmedicineslongevitymedicine.com. Calocurb is a 100% natural capsule that helps you feel full faster and supports healthy weight management. Powered by Amarasate, a patented hop extract backed by over 15 years of research, it's the only natural GLP-1 activator clinically shown to reduce cravings, hunger, and calorie intake in just 1 hour. Go to calocurb.com/drkara10 and use the code drkara10 to get a discount on your purchase. Hi, everybody. Welcome to New Frontiers in Functional Medicine, where we are interviewing the best minds in functional medicine. And of course, today is no exception. I am with Dr. Sarah Kennedy. She is the founder of Calocurb, a science-backed weight management product now sold in 5 global markets. She's a former executive at Frontera and Vitaco. Sarah brings over 20 years of experience in health, nutrition, and leadership. She's also an MIT Sloan Fellow, and she's a trained veterinarian. Sarah, Dr. Kennedy, welcome to New Frontiers in Functional Medicine. I am so excited to talk to you. Actually, we're going to just pick up on a conversation we started just over a year ago at IFM, the international conference when it was in Vegas. Thrilled with the science that you're doing and the discoveries that you've been making and the product born out of this extensive research called Calocurb. So give me the origin. Let's start from the beginning. Talk about who you are, this investment from the government, from the New Zealand government in conducting this research, and where you ended up in this new product that you've discovered and brought to market.
Thanks, Cara. Look, I'm delighted to be here. I will try and speak a bit slower because you will notice my accent is a bit odd. It's New Zealand. How it came about, it's actually fascinating. Almost all, or 100% of primary research in New Zealand is done by the government. So in 2010, a group of very talented scientists in an institute called Plant and Food Research had the hypothesis that they would find a plant-based extract that suppressed appetite. Now, why did they have this hypothesis? It was actually partly from historical reasons. So in times of famine, Scottish people in the Highland chewed very, very bitter berries. Kalahari desert people chewed very, very bitter cactus before they went hunting. That was actually the origin of hoodia, if you remember hoodia. And then there'd been some recent pharmacological work done in rats. So they put in a grant to the government, and it was called Foods for Appetite Control. And they got back a $20 million grant to conduct this. So that was in 2010. Now you've got to remember...
Wasn't there a little bit of background concern around the potential of a sort of impending obesity / diabetes epidemic happening, and so there was an eye towards that as well.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I think everyone sees New Zealand as, which it is, clean and green, but we have a similar obesity and weight problem in New Zealand. And there weren't really any effective, or the government, they were expensive and effective drugs. So how could we do this in another way? So they received this grant. So firstly, where their hypothesis came from was this bitter. So the whole bitterness. So they took over 300 human biopsies from right down through the gastrointestinal tract, through colonoscopies and enteroscopies, I always get those wrong, right down through the gastro. And they actually mapped the whole of our bitter taste receptors right down through the intestinal tract. Now that hasn't been done before. So they proved that we have 25 taste receptors on our tongue, and we have them right down through our gastrointestinal tract. Actually, interesting, about 90% or 92% of people have 1 to 18 or 1 to 19, and about 7%, 5 to 7% have 1 to 25. So we kind of call them the super tasters. And they mapped them all and the distribution. But what they showed was these bitter taste receptors in the lower intestine, when stimulated with something very bitter, released 3 appetite suppressing hormones. That was CCK, GLP-1 and PYY. So they then could show they released, but what would they release against that would actually be safe and keep the receptors alive?
I want you to define the compounds that were stimulated, and I want and then I want you to continue with the story. But was this the first time the bitter taste receptors were actually mapped out in the gastrointestinal tract? I mean, is it this team that should
Yes.
be credited with that work in the scientific literature?
Yes, it's published. So to be published, it has to be original.
Right. It's really kind of remarkable to me because it took a lot of us by storm, this original research about where the distribution of the bitter receptors. And in fact, there was in that time, or I think perhaps, around that time, bitter receptors were discovered in the lung parenchyma
Right.
as well, extraordinarily enough. So hats off to them for doing such extraordinary science.
Well, it came from, and can I tell you why it evolved? Why do we have them through our body? And I find that the most fascinating. Humans, and we can't even say animals because we haven't mapped animals, but humans, plants and humans evolved at, the same time. Now, humans have these because bitter is often associated with toxic. So if you eat something very, very bitter, you'll spit it out. If it goes into your stomach, you'll either produce ghrelin, which says eat more so you can dissipate or you can take this toxin, or you'll vomit it up. But if it goes into the intestine or just down the intestine, you can't do any of that. So your body releases these appetite suppressing hormones to tell your brain to stop eating. Because what it's saying is you could have eaten something poisonous. And it's really interesting. So humans evolved with us, but plants evolved at the same time. So if you think about an apple tree, an apple itself is very, very sweet because the apple tree wants humans to eat it to spread the seeds. But the leaves are very, very bitter because the tree doesn't want the humans to eat the leaves. So it's kind of humans and animals evolved at the same time. And that's really where the hypothesis came from, to how could we stimulate these bitter taste receptors to get a behavioural change in appetite. So that's where that came from. So once they had these human cells, they then built this enteroendothelial model. Just think of this high throughput model. And they tested over 1,000 extracts to see what would make these taste receptors release these hormones. Literally only 2 did. Now that's actually not unusual because if we were eating bitter things, or and we were not eating all the time, we wouldn't survive. So it was important. So there were two. The first one was a potato oxalate, or part of potato oxalate, which is great, but it's poisonous. So you'd be thin but dead. So that was counted out. And the second one, literally the only other one, was a hop. So an extract of a hop. So hops are a bittering agent that goes into beer. And because this institute is plant and food research, and they've done all the breeding of hops in New Zealand, they then tested another 50 varieties of hops till they got what they called the Eureka. And this was the hop variety that gave the most expression of these appetite, the highest expression of these appetite suppressing hormones. They then went on and called this extract Amarasate. So you'll see called Amarasate. Now, I always say, never let a scientist name anything. No one in the world can pronounce it. But Amara means bitter in Latin, and sate means satiation. So it was bitter satiation, but of course everyone pronounces it wrong. I even think I don't pronounce it how the scientists do. But they had the extract. That was about 2014 then, because they then did a lot of things in formulating it and so on like that. They then took it into their first human clinical trial, and that was sort of the fundamental trial. And so they had 30 men, which they cannulated or took bloods from all the time. They gave, well, it wasn't even called Calocurb then, it was just the extract in a delayed release capsule. They gave it an hour before an eat till you're full lunch and an eat till you're full snack. And they could then measure the release of CCK, GLP-1 and PYY against placebo. And that's where we saw these enormous spikes. So 600% for CCK, which is cholecystokinin, which is a very potent but short-acting appetite suppressant, 600% for GLP-1, and around 400% for PYY. And this acted over 4 hours. They then...
And what is PYY?
It is another appetite suppressing hormone, but it's much lower down in the colon, or much lower down in your intestinal tract. So in fact, what's happening is the Amarasate, the active ingredient, releases in the upper duodenum, or in the upper intestinal tract, and it kind of goes down. I kind of describe it like a ball within a tube, or a ping pong ball going down like that, and it's stimulating these bitter taste receptors as it's going down, which is why we're getting this 4 hours of activity. Because you would know that GLP-1 and these incretins, or these appetite suppressing hormones, are degraded within about 2 minutes. So, and that's the body's natural and normal thing to do. But because we're going down and we're activating these bitter taste receptors right down through the gastrointestinal tract, we're getting this prolonged action. And when they measured the calories, the calorie intake, remember, from an eat till you're full lunch and an eat till you're full snack, they got 18% less calories than the placebo. So what that's telling you is, A, you saw the rise of the appetite suppressing hormones, and then B, the calorie reduction.
Significant.
Well, there's two ways to compare it. With a semaglutide, so a Wegovy or an Ozempic, on average, that is about 24% reduction a day. So we are 18%. So there is that comparison. The other thing is the rise of CCK and these three gastrointestinal tracts. You actually have to be above 400% to make a behavioural change. So all of these products that say, I stimulate GLP-1, Yes, they do. You can eat an apple and it stimulates GLP-1, but to make a behavioural change, you have to be above 400%. And the behavioural change is, I don't want to eat as much. So that's really what's happening. And that was the first clinical trial, and that was sort of the fundamental. So
When was this published? When was this published, the first one?
that was finished in 2016 and
Okay.
presented at an obesity conference in 2000 in UK actually in 2017, and they got huge publicity, but of course it wasn't commercialized. So because of my background, I was approached. So this is what happens. They get to something where they think it can be commercialized, and then they go, well, we need to have a partner to commercialize it. So they approached me for some, guidance. What would I do? And this was in 2017. And when I saw it, I had never seen something like this that had this amount of science with this big a category, which we know is across the world, that we could use that comes from source to shelf. And I was absolutely entranced by it. So a bit like the man that liked the product, he bought the company, I said, I want it. And I raised the capital, formed a team, named the product, commercialized it. So that's really
Amazing.
the background of it.
But let me ask
Fascinating.
you, let me
Sure.
ask you, I have questions. I've got questions for you. Well, first of all, I just want to point out that, one of the most successful caloric restriction study that we've got in humans, successfully, and which successfully slowed the rate of biological aging as measured by the Dunedin pace of aging clock, a clock that was developed in the amazing New Zealand, by the way, and really one of the best tools
Wow.
we have. Yeah, I know. I've featured New Zealand associated science 3 times on my
Right.
podcast. You're a very well represented country on this podcast because you're up to pretty extraordinary science. It's pretty cool.
Well,
Anyway,
we're lucky because the
it,
government
it really
supports
supports
it
it.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. Anyway, so in this particular study, it's called Calorie. And by the way, folks, we will put all of the references that Sarah's talking about, and we'll pop the Calorie study in the show notes for you to be able to access. But it was a 10% restriction that was maintained long term that was associated in a reduction in in the rate of aging, the pace of aging as measured by that particular clock. So, really 18% is, from that lens, quite extraordinary. And of course, the extent to which you're increasing, GLP-1 and the associated hormones is, it's quite astonishing with this hops derived compound, and that it's specially packaged. So, just if for anybody who might have missed it, you need to take it just about an hour before your meals, and it, kind of ping pongs down and lights on all of those various receptors to have that appetite suppressing quality. And I will just say as an aside that in my practice, I've been using this
Great.
routine, with the expected outcome. So it's within the whole context of a functional medicine approach because that's what I do. But yeah, I'm really happy to report our own use clinically has been really quite satisfying, and I think consistent with the literature that you're sharing. So you conducted that first, and okay, so you've got a long and pretty storied history there in New Zealand in the various companies you've been involved in, and you're a veterinarian doctor by training. And I know we'll talk about that when we meet in person. We'll talk about some of the topics that we got into off camera. But why did you buy the company? Why did they go to you for advice? Why were you the person to bring this product forward? And I'm just really curious.
Yeah, sure. I I moved, I did practice for 5 years, but then I moved into first animal nutrition and then human nutrition. Lots and lots of stories behind that.
Okay.
But when I was much earlier on, I took over as CEO a very iconic but small health and wellbeing company in New Zealand. It was then called Healtheries. And we grew it over the next 10 years from 25 to 200 million and had a huge amount. So this was my background in functional and health and well-being. So they're like, well, Sarah, what would you do with this? And then I'd done other things. But as I said to you, up until this time, particularly in the supplement world or the functional medicine world, we literally had thermogenics, we had fillers, and we had laxatives. This was even before the whole probiotic. That wasn't even around then. So for me to see this, but the interesting thing is, Cara, so I'm like, I've got the best mousetrap in the world. Everyone is going to come. But because it was so new, when we launched in 2018, people are like going, what? You're messing with my brain, you're releasing these hormones. So, we did because people would take it and get the results, but it was slower. As you would know, in 2021, Wegovy was approved, or, the Ozempic sister was approved by the FDA for obesity treatment. Novo Nordisk spent $1 billion on marketing. They took out 239,000 practitioners to lunch and dinner. So they really educated the market on the etiology of weight management. So I always get down on my knees and thank them every day because they really took away this doctrine that weight management was just about willpower. They really showed that hunger is from the hindbrain, and it is an evolutionary trait in us. Most people don't realize if you reduce your calories by 25% per day, your hunger will double over 4 months. So, of course, diets fail because your body is saying to you, go out and eat something. You could be in famine. And that is what helped us to evolve. It's what got us out of our caves. So there's a whole thing in that. And then during this time, and you would have read, we continued doing clinical trials. So we had this one fundamental which showed the mode of action, and then we've gone on to do 3 more.
That's great.
Incredibly exciting. The first one was in men, and this was really looking at hunger, and we wanted to show that we did, of course we depress hunger because people eat less, but you have to be able to scientifically measure it. So we did men in a 24-hour, so this is all done independently, in a 24-hour water-only fast. And we gave Calocurb at 16 hours and 20 hours and measured hunger. And we got an 80% decrease in increased hunger at the end of that 24 hours. So the people that hadn't had Calocurb were 80% more hungry than the people that did. So that was great.
And how did you establish that? Did you use subjective
VAS.
questionnaire?
Yeah, a visual analog scale. So these are all ethics approved, double-blinded,
sure.
and all the rest. I was a bit grumpy at the time, but I'm thrilled now. We then went on and did it in females. Now, I had to do it in females because to get my Australian regulations, the Australians said, well, you proved it in men, but you haven't proved it in women. So I'm like, okay. So 30 women, 24-hour, you'd think, okay, this is quite easy, 24-hour water-only fast. But 30 women in a 3-way crossover study, you have to do 90 times. And as you know, women are not used in human clinicals because we have hormones. So we had to match each of those women up on their exact day of their menstrual cycle and on the same day of the week because people eat differently. And we had to do that 90 times during COVID. So it took about 18 months and $250,000. But the results were stunning, absolutely stunning.
What'd you show?
We showed that at the end, so women, you know how we said 80% decrease for men, we showed 100% decrease for females. So that was so at the end of 24 hours, they were no more hungry than they were at 16 hours. And that's in the hardest time of a fast. But then even more, we measured craving and we got 120% decrease in craving. Now that's massive, massive. And then we did rebound eating and showed a 14.5% reduction in calorie intake. Now that was 4 hours after the last dose, which showed the length of time. Because remember, the first clinical, we gave it an hour after taking. We measured it, and that was 18%. This was 4 hours, so we could show the longevity of it. So some incredible implications or reasons you can use it with women is most people don't realise in the luteal phase of the menstrual cycle, women will eat on average 200 calories more. And this is once again quite natural because your body is preparing, in case you implant an egg. And this is what we call PMS. And people go, oh, I go crazy for sugar or something like that. Well, your body's actually saying to them, you might need more energy. So you think of then, women can come in and out of Calocurb because, it's a capsule that you take twice a day. So you can come in and out of it over these times. There's a whole lot of ways you can use it. So that was the third. And of course, we're just completing our fourth human clinical now, which is our largest and longest, and results are due in October.
That's exciting. And I know that's men and women together. You've been working on this for years. You're looking at weight. You're also looking at a number of other biomarkers. Anybody listening to this podcast, we have a lot of clinicians listening. They would be thinking about lipids and about glucose and about insulin and, just a myriad.
Body, so weight, body composition, bloods, liver, kidney, some qualitative. Inflammation, yes, that's a big one. So this has been for 6 months with a 3-month follow-up. Finishes this July, so you're right, it has been years. By the time it goes through analysis and it's unblinded, it'll be October. So all fingers, we know anecdotally, and you've used it, we know it works, but in order to make any claims and to substantiate, which I think you need to be able to do, you want the clinicals to be able to show it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you already have some really strong, exciting clinical data. A lot of women listening, women clinicians. It wouldn't be the first time on our program talking about, cravings changing with the menstrual cycle. And this as a tool to be able to use, it's quick acting, it's short term. So to be prescribing this during certain times of the cycle as appropriate could be, just really game changing.
What most people tell us.
Yeah.
What most people tell us is you take the noise out of my brain. It obviously makes you feel full faster. So just to reiterate, we work in an hour. So take it, and we say take it an hour before a main meal because you want it to go down and disperse in the upper duodenum, and you want it on an empty stomach. It's also degraded in 24 hours. So it goes down, it degrades in the colon, and then so it's and less than 1% is absorbed in the bloodstream. So it's not going to affect the liver, it's not going to affect the kidneys, it's not going to affect drugs. Just think of it like that ping pong ball going down and just lighting up those taste receptors.
I have a bunch of questions as you're throwing these out. So using these in conjunction, actually, no, before I ask you about using them in conjunction with GLP, a lot of folks, a lot of clinicians are prescribing GLP-1s to lower the noise in relation to alcohol or in relation to other addictions. Have you had any, I know you haven't studied it yet, but any anecdotal reports in that arena? I'm curious.
Oh, yes, a lot. A lot of people
A
come back
lot?
and say, I just don't want that wine. I just because we know the appetite center is very close to the addiction centers, and this
Yeah.
is what they're studying. So we get, unfortunately, as my husband would say, it hasn't really stopped my wine intake. But we,
That's funny. Have you tried it for that, or you're the only one who hasn't?
but I think I just drink my way through it. But absolutely for that. I just, as you said, just the applications. Practitioners are using it in a number of different ways. The first way is, of course, as an alternative. For people that can't take the side effects, and we know they're quite severe, they can't afford it, or they don't want to inject themselves, or they want something natural. So a wonderful
Mhm.
way to say, hey, try this. The second one is, as you talked about, in combination with the GLP-1 injectables. And a lot of them are using it like that because, firstly, they can reduce the dosage right down to almost the lowest dosage and give Calocurb at the same time. So you're getting that external or exogenous hormone, which is a synthetic hormone, but you're also stimulating your own natural hormone and getting really good results with that.
Right.
And the third one, which I think is what I think is the most important, and I say it's not an if, it's a must. When people are titrating off the GLP-1 injectables, most people don't realize, and we can put this paper on the notes, you have actually suppressed your endogenous GLP-1 to almost zero. So this is why when people come off, they get this massive hunger because
They
it's
gain the
like,
weight back.
yeah, but this is massive hunger.
Mm.
And so I say, as you're titrating down, put Calocurb in because you've got to re-stimulate. You've got to super stimulate that gut-brain axis. So, but it's interesting, well, that's the physiological reason. So just remember your endogenous is at zero. And if you think about it, that happens when you have a synthetic hormone. But the other one, which is quite interesting, there's a psychology paper or a paper that measured people's feelings when they came off the injectables. And 100% of them felt fear and hopelessness. So the fear and hopelessness, of course, came from having to come off these injectables. These were insurance, but then not having anything to help them. And so we are working on doing another clinical trial looking at that with people going on to a maintenance. And I think it's this wonderful safety net for people. And also, because you kind of go from no food noise and absolutely bathing your body in GLP-1 to nothing. So with Calocurb, you can actually start to adjust your lifestyle and go, okay, I'm going to take back control, but also still managing that hunger and craving.
Yeah, no, I see it as, I mean, in my practice, I've used it as a tool in the structures that you're describing, um, and have experienced it to be really quite beneficial. Toxicity. Now, I know, again, it was really carefully researched by the New Zealand government. You're continuing to research it. Is it safe for long-term use? And also talk about the dosing that people are using. Is everybody following, one twice a day, or so the safety, the side effects, and dosing. Talk about those three things.
Okay. So important for practitioners listening is it's an extract. So we take the hops. Oh my God, they're beautiful. I was down there when they were being harvested about 3 months ago. They'd brought 50 brewers from around the world to look at the harvest, and I'm the only person there. They're all drinking beer, and I'm the only person there, talking about weight management. But they harvest them. We take them and put them through CO2 supercritical extraction. So we remove all the phytoestrogens. So all you're left with is your alpha and beta acids and a small amount of essential oil. So if you ever do get a small reflux, men quite like it because they say it's like a beer burp.
So funny.
But what, so no phytoestrogens, so no potential estrogenic effects. As in toxicity, the safety profiles, so we have grass, so generally recognised as safe, and hops, have been used for, 2,000 years as a bittering agent. The other thing is, because it's not absorbed in the bloodstream, or less than 1%, of course it's just travelling through like that ping pong ball. So that's sort of the toxicity profile, and I'm very happy with it. And just on that, I've been on it for 6 years. Of course, I'm going to say that as a founder. However, I will tell you, and I say this quite openly, I had a love-hate relationship with food my whole life. I love it, but I hate it. Binging, dieting, yo-yo, all the rest.
Okay.
And I know all the reasons, but it still didn't hurt me. With Calocurb, I can quite honestly say I have now a good relationship with food. I actually can eat it, I just don't eat as much. So it's kind of, I always laugh. They used to say gin was mummy's little helper. I kind of think Calicurb's my little helper because I have this normal relationship now.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's
I want to just jump on
Sure.
that, and then we'll talk about side effects. And um, I can see this being used as a tool to support people following some of the dietary patterns that we prescribe. I mean, everybody knows in functional medicine, probably you're going to do something like an elimination diet. You'll probably be asked to stop some of your favorite foods, like, wheat, dairy, perhaps, and that can be really anxiety provoking. In fact, I'm sure there are practitioners listening who have already used it as an aid to support some of the dietary changes, and I would love to hear from you and your experience. But that's a great thought, Sarah. And note to myself to use it in that, for people who need a little additional support for
Just to
some of the
help.
dietary prescriptions. Yeah.
Well, I intermittent fast because I'm lazy, and I'm just lazy, and so I take mine in the morning, and I'll go right through to 12, 1 o'clock, and then
Nice.
I won't even eat as much then, and of course
Yeah.
I don't get the rebound eating, so that's
Smart.
just what I do.
Right, right,
As in
right.
dosage, we do have an onboarding.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the reason for that is we are super stimulating. Remember, we are doubling the increase of your natural GLP-1. So we're super stimulating that. So we say take one a day for 2 days, take two a day for 2 days, and then get up to the dosage, which is two. They're tiny capsules, an hour before lunch and an hour before dinner. Now, what that does is A, it gets the body used to that super stimulation, and B, around 5% of people will only need one capsule. I mean, and we believe they're the super tasters. You know how I said about 5 to 7% of people have 1 to 25? We believe they're, and it doesn't matter about your size, your weight, you just may be a super taster, and you may only need one capsule. So
Very interesting.
in that week of onboarding, you'll know that. And you'll know if you take too much, is the fact the only side effect we get, well, I shouldn't say it is the only, is a laxative effect. So, and you will know that immediately. It happens an hour to an hour and a bit after you've taken Calocurb, and it's a flushing effect. And we believe it's a CCK, which is flushing in the gut, but your body gets used to it. And, it's interesting, a lot of people don't mind it, particularly if they've been on the injectables, which the side effect is constipation. But that's why we have the onboarding and getting your body used to it. And, maybe you're a one capsule person, but that's in about 5 to 7%. Always take it on an empty stomach. or a semi-empty stomach with a glass of water, because you want it to go through to the upper duodenum. So if you've got a lot of food in your stomach, it may get caught in there. So that's the point about getting it with an empty stomach. So to
Okay.
help people remember, I kind of say, think about it, like at morning tea, you'll probably, it's such an English thing to say, isn't it? Morning tea. But, when you have your cup of coffee, think about it well, I take mine at 9, it doesn't really matter, but think about it at 10 o'clock and that'll just see you through. Think about it at 3 o'clock, when we have that slump, think about it then and just think, oh, I'll take it now.
What about now? How do you do it with your intermittent fasting structure that you follow? Say that again, because I know people
Oh,
will be interested
yeah.
in that.
I just take mine at 9 o'clock in the morning. Oh, it doesn't really matter, but I'm just like, oh, I'm not going to eat till 1 o'clock. So I do the 18-6. So I'm just like, oh, I'll take it at 9. And of course, all I'm doing is I'm super stimulating the release of GLP-1 and so on like that. So it's just telling my brain, hey, you're okay. Well, no, it's just I don't have that food noise. So I can walk by those muffins, I can walk by those bagels and go, no, I'm okay, I'll wait. The other thing for me is when I eat at lunchtime, I won't eat as much and it'll last me for longer.
Right. No,
I, I
that makes
take I
sense.
do take it sometimes. It's just because I'm in maintenance. I will take it sometimes in late afternoon, maybe early evening. And the reason I do that, if I know I'm going to eat late, I'm going to a cocktail party or something like that, and I'm going to eat late, and I just don't want to go and eat all the canapes or go and have a very large dinner. Uh, and you're like, how? It's quite a subtle change, but I always say to people, how you have a really big meal, or you have a meal, and about 45 minutes later you go, oh, I've eaten too much. Well, that's your natural signaling to your brain telling you you're full and to stop eating. We just do it before, so you'll feel full sooner. And it's quite interesting, and you'll stay fuller for longer. I
Yeah, no, it
just
makes sense. Yeah, go
I'll just
ahead.
tell you a little story. When I first tried it years ago, when I first had some sample capsules, it must have been in 2017, I was out to dinner with some girlfriends, and we're New Zealand, of course, we'd had a slow cooked leg of lamb shared between us. And, we'd finished eating and we were just talking. And you know how sometimes, well, me, I'm terrible, you pick at nice crunchy bits on the lamb or something like that. I sat back and I thought, oh, I'm full. I can't pick. And it was sort of like this massive revelation in my head. So yeah, it certainly will make you feel like that.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, which is consistent with the feedback around using GLP-1s. Um, Only, the safety profile for this is likely much, much higher than the safety profile for GLP-1s, where,
And we
um,
follow the normal biorhythms of the body. If you look at that graph, you know, on the placebo it goes up and that, we just double that curve. So
yeah,
it follows the normal body. You don't need high GLP-1 when you're asleep.
right,
You need it when you're
right,
going to eat.
right. It'll be really interesting, if you decide to do a long-term study to, see whether you identify some of those extraordinary benefits they're identifying with the synthetic
Oh,
GLP-1s, or if there's a little bit of a signal towards that. But this next study that you guys will be unblinding, in the fall, will give a suggestion. If you see
yes.
difference with the metabolic markers and so forth. Exciting stuff. It makes a lot of sense. Is it contraindicated with anything?
We say, because we said it's in the gut, if you have an inflammatory gut disease, if you have Crohn's, IBD, or something like that, where you've got inflammation, I would, there's no, why am I saying that? I just wouldn't put something in your gut if it's inflamed. And that would be what my contraindications would be. And of
Oh.
course, it's never been studied in pregnant women or breastfeeding women. So it's never been studied in that. So we say that the same.
Do you make any recommendations? I mean, have you guys sort of pondered an optimal dietary pattern with this? I know, interestingly, with GLP-1, people can adopt some really poor eating habits using
Yeah.
it. So they're not eating a lot, but when they do make their food choices, they're horrific. They're simple carbs, sugar, maybe a drive-through fast food meal. In fact, I was talking to a colleague of mine who works for a laboratory doing stool testing, and she just said some of the most damaged, dysbiotic, inflamed guts were people using GLP for whom their dietary pattern had dropped, their caloric intake had dropped considerably, but their choices had become, just really, really compromised, really poor food quality choices. What are your thoughts on that, on dietary pattern recommendations you might make?
Well, Cara, this is why we like going through practitioners. This is why we focus on practitioners, because Calocurb, we say we're a tool in the
Yeah,
toolkit. We are
right.
not we're not the only solution. You have to have dietary and behavioral management, and we believe practitioners are the best to do that. We're just going to
Yeah,
help. Anything you'd say would be, a high protein, a healthy. We say a healthy diet, but we don't prescribe anything. We just want people they can something that they will eat consistently and less
mm,
of.
yeah,
But no, a practitioner is absolutely the best person because they're going to advise a person on the way they live, on what they do. And there's a whole lot, as we know, there's a whole lot of behavioral things as well, such as stress eating, anxiety, all of those types of things that a practitioner can help someone through versus we're a tool in the toolkit.
yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I'm thinking of another patient who actually I did use it. So she was on an elimination diet and was not happy about that. And Calocurb was helpful and continues to be helpful for her during that time. But we also, you can uh, kind of turn the volume up on the benefit of Calocurb when you play around with macronutrients, like turn
Yeah.
a little bit of fat up, do, as you said, a little bit more protein, but you can also have plenty of room for the all important vegetables, the all important phytochemicals that we love so much here in our clinical practice. But yeah, no, it makes sense. It makes sense to use it, and have a whole program designed by somebody who's trained in it.
Uh, you know, when consumers say to us, it didn't work, and we ask them what they mean,
Mm,
they say, I
yeah,
didn't lose 10 pounds in a week. And it's
right,
like, well, you never, so we try to put a realistic expectation on them, and which
right.
is why working with a practitioner is so good. And I
Yes.
suppose I shouldn't be shocked or I shouldn't be surprised, but the lack of understanding of nutrition sometimes, we have to really understand that because some people have got they don't know why they need protein. They don't know why, they need this balance of fats and so on like that. So absolutely, I always say practitioner first.
So we see, as you know, because we've just talked about it, um, some pretty negative fallout when people transition off their synthetic GLPs. And if it's not done exquisitely carefully and with support, such as using Calocurb, plus, an appropriate dietary pattern and psychological support, etc., there can be some negative fallout. What is your experience? What has the feedback been on people transitioning off? And do people generally transition off? Do you recommend that people transition off, or is it safe to use this long term?
For Calicut?
Mm-hmm. For
Oh,
Calocurb.
yeah, absolutely. As I said, I've been on it for 6 years. Some of our long-term users, as I said, it's a safety net. I mean, they just use it. We have people with us for over 5 to 6 years. Um, there's It is absolutely safe. It acts as that. And the other great thing is people come in and out of it as well. And we know
Okay.
people come in and out of it because we track people coming in and out. And, they may use it, like I use it all the time for traveling. You can imagine traveling. You're always, at it. Well, I was in America
You're eating
12 times
out.
last year.
Yeah.
Eating out, airport food, all of those things. How are you going to make good choices there?
Yeah.
And this just helps you make good choices with it. I'll use it. on holidays, if I'm going to be surrounded by a lot of food that I want to eat, I just don't want to eat as much of it and feel like that. But if I'm going out to a beautiful dinner, say a degustation dinner, I'm not going to use it then because I want to eat my
You
meal.
want to enjoy
So,
it, yeah.
yeah, so, I sort of come in and out of it. But anytime, I feel that food noise and that coming back to me, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just going to have my Calocurb. And it's one of those things, it's always in my handbag. And we were laughing at work the other day. I had my marketing person with me, and she's digging around in my handbag. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, oh my God, I thought it was my handbag. I'm looking for my Calocurb. So, we've
That's
all
funny.
got them in our handbag. So, yeah, it's just something that is part of. And of course, I'm going to say that, but I talked to you about before my relationship with food, and this has just made it so. Oh, I'm comfortable. I'm happy now with my relationship. So, yeah, it's a game changer for me, which is
That's nice.
always a founder has a story, and and that's sort of with a game changer for me.
Well, I'm telling you, I can't wait to see where you go with the product. I'm thrilled that you asked me and my team to, support you in the launch of Calocurb here in the U.S. And when we have an audience much wider than the U.S., so you'll be hitting a lot of people. I'm just thrilled. I'm excited about your commitment to science. I'm really looking forward to the data that you discover in this publication that you shared, or the study that you shared with us that you have yet to unblind. We'll be sure to follow up with that and report that on our site. Again, everybody, on your show notes page, you'll have all of the studies that we've referenced here, and any other goodies that we think are important. Of course, we have our amazing offer to folks that will be on the show notes. Sarah Kennedy, again, thank you for joining me, and we're excited about what you guys are up to.
Thank you so much, Cara, and to your team for having me on.
I want to personally invite you to the Functional Medicine is Longevity Medicine Masterclass, a free online event featuring the leading minds in functional and longevity medicine. We'll explore why functional medicine remains the most science-backed path to extending health span. In a world chasing the latest longevity hacks, we're spotlighting what we've known all along. Healthy longevity starts with root cause resolution, systems biology, and personalized care. Join us live September 17th through the 19th at functionalmedicineslongevitymedicine.com. Calocurb is a 100% natural capsule that helps you feel full faster and supports healthy weight management. Powered by Amarasate, a patented hop extract backed by over 15 years of research, it's the only natural GLP-1 activator clinically shown to reduce cravings, hunger, and calorie intake in just 1 hour. Go to calocurb.com/drkara10 and use the code drkara10 to get a discount on your purchase. Disclaimer. This podcast is for informational purposes only. If you have a specific medical concern or if you have any questions, please speak with your healthcare provider.